We multiply complex numbers the same as we do polynomials. We just have to remember that I squared equals -1 by definition. So whenever you see I squared, replace it with -1. So let's multiply these polynomials. We have 8i times 7i. So multiplying the coefficients, 8 times 7 is 56. Multiplying the imaginary units, I times I, you have 2 i's, so that's I squared. Every time you see I squared, replace it with -1, and so the answer equals -56. As long as you remember that I squared equals -1, you really shouldn't have any problems with multiplying complex numbers as long as you know your multiplication facts. So let's go ahead and multiply this one. Multiplying the coefficients, 4 times -3, that equals -12. We have 2 i's, so that's I squared. Every time you see I squared, replace it with -1. -12 times -1 equals 12. And that's your answer. Numbers using the distributive property. And distributive property is simply when you have a term on the outside of a parentheses that you have to multiply that term with both terms that are in the inside. So let's start. 5i times 7 equals 35i. And now we're going to distribute the 5i with the 3i. 5i times 3i. The coefficients of those, 5 times 3 is 15. You have 2 i's, so that's 15i squared. Remember, every time you see I squared, replace it with -1. Positive 15 times -1 is -15. Writing our answer in standard form with the real part first, then the imaginary, would be -15 plus 13i. Using FOIL, first, outer, inner, last. So once we use FOIL, first, outer, inner, last, we should have the following terms. Recall, every time you see I squared, you're going to replace it with -1. -27 times -1 equals positive 27. Next, we're going to combine our real numbers together. 20 plus 7 equals 47. Writing our answer in standard form would be 47 plus 33i. Of binomials, and I'm going to use the square of binomial method we covered earlier in this course. But feel free to utilize FOIL. All you have to do is just put them side by side. It simply means two of the very same thing. Put them side by side and use FOIL. But again, I'm going to use the square of binomial formula just to refresh your memory of what that formula involves. Recall, to get the first term, you're going to square the first term. So within the binomial, so 4 times 4 equals 16. So my first term would be 16. To get your last term, you also square the last number. The last number there, 2i times 2i, would be 4i squared. To get the middle term, you would multiply the number 2 along with these numbers. So these two numbers, when you multiply them together, that's 8i. And multiply 2 with that. 2 times 8 is 16, so that would be 16i. Okay? And again, that's what we call the square of binomial formula. Now, had you done 4, you would see you would come up with the same exact thing. All right, so again, don't forget, every time you see I squared, replace it with -1. Positive 4 times negative 1 equals negative 4. Lastly, all we have to do is combine the real numbers, 16 minus 4, and then write our answer in standard form with the real part first and the imaginary part following, which gives you 12 minus 16i. Why these conjugates? We know they're conjugates because the only difference between the two binomials is their sign, their difference in sign. So recall you only have to do the F and the L, so multiplying first, 8 times 8 is 64. Multiplying last, 9i times negative 9i equals negative 81i squared. Remember, every time you see I squared, replace it with negative 1. Negative 81 times negative 1 equals positive 81. Now all we have to do is add the two numbers and our answer equals 145. And there you have it, multiplying complex numbers.